All right, today we're jumping into a story from the Gospel of Matthew that's, well, it's both powerful and deeply unsettling. We're talking about the healing of the Gadarene demoniacs. And it's a story that really makes you think about good and evil, the real cost of a miracle, and just how complex human fear can be. So, right out of the gate, the story throws us into a scene of absolute terror. This description from Matthew isn't just setting the scene, it's laying out a problem that seems completely impossible. You have two men, totally overcome by something evil, who have made an entire area unsafe by sheer, uncontrollable violence.
So, you might be wondering, how did Jesus even end up here? Well, it's right after he calmed that life-threatening storm on the sea. He and his disciples land in this foreign territory, and they're immediately met by a storm of a totally different kind.
Geographically, this is a really key detail. They've left the familiar Jewish areas around Capernaum and crossed over into Gentile territory, a place mostly inhabited by non-Jews. So you gotta understand, they're outsiders here. They're stepping into a place with its own culture, its own economy, and as we're about to see, its own really deep-seated problems.
I mean, the picture Matthew paints here is just harrowing. These aren't just troubled men. They're in a state of utter torment. They're living among the dead, in the tombs, totally cut off from society. Their life is just constant, extreme violence, so extreme that it's actually shut down local roads. They're basically a living horror story that the community has absolutely no answer for.
So let's get to the confrontation itself, because what happens next is wild. The very first words spoken aren't from Jesus, but from the spirits inside these men, and their reaction is instant and incredibly revealing. This is just astounding. Before Jesus says a single word, they cry out, and they identify him with perfect clarity. They don't ask who he is, they declare it. And listen to their question. It's not just that they're afraid of him, they're afraid of his timing. They seem to know that a final judgment is coming, and they're terrified that it's arrived ahead of schedule. And that title they use, Son of God, it is absolutely crucial. You know, while the disciples and the crowds are still scratching their heads, wondering, what manner of man is this? These demonic spirits have zero confusion. They immediately recognize his divine identity and the supreme authority that comes right along with it. So, in that one terrified cry, they reveal three huge things. They see his divine nature, they get his authority over them, and they totally understand their own destiny, which is judgment. It's like they affirm the whole theological reason for Jesus' mission in one terrified outburst. So, faced with this ultimate authority, the spirits do something interesting. They don't fight, they try to negotiate. Their goal isn't to win here, it's to cut a better deal for themselves, to avoid being cast out into the abyss with nowhere to go. And their request is, well, it's bizarre. A ways off, there is this huge herd of pigs. Now, the very fact that there are pigs here confirms we're in Gentile territory, since swine were considered unclean for Jews. And the demons are begging Jesus to let them enter the animals, because apparently inhabiting pigs is better than whatever they think is coming next. Okay, so this is probably the part where you're thinking, wait a minute, can evil spirits actually do that? Can they possess animals? It's a logical question for any of us reading this today. Well, the source material is pretty direct about it. It doesn't get into the spiritual mechanics or the how. It simply shows us that when they are given permission by a higher authority, yes, these spirits can influence and enter animals. The how is a mystery. The what is just shown to be a reality in the story. And the permission Jesus gives, man, this is the climax of the whole exorcism. What happens next is a display of authority that is as swift as it is absolute. Just think about that for a second. The power packed into that single word. There's no fancy chant, no struggle, no elaborate ritual. Just one word. Go. And with that, the entire spiritual conflict is over. And the result is immediate, and it is pure chaos. The spirits obey, they leave the men, they enter the pigs. And then the entire herd, now under this evil influence, goes completely wild. They stampede down a steep cliff and drown in the sea below. In an instant, two men are free, but an entire herd of livestock is gone. So the miracle is done. But believe it or not, the story is nowhere near over. The focus now shifts from the supernatural event to the very human reaction to it. And that reaction is all about the staggering economic cost. The guys watching the pigs, they see all this happen,
and they run for the city. And you have to imagine the story they're telling. It's got two parts, right? The amazing news is those two terrifying madmen are totally healed. The terrible news? Our entire livelihood just ran off a cliff into the sea. This news brings the whole town running out. So the townspeople are now faced with this stark, frankly, impossible choice. On one hand, you have an incredible miracle of human restoration. Two men who were a source of constant terror are now sane. On the other hand, you have a devastating financial loss. Their dilemma really boils down to one question. What do you value more?
And their choice is sobering. They see Jesus, and instead of celebrating this incredible miracle, they ask him to leave. The restoration of 2 human lives was just not worth the price of their pigs. The power was too frightening, the disruption was too great, and the cost was just too high. And this really forces us to ask a deep question about human nature. Their reaction isn't just about money, it's about fear. The power they just witnessed is awesome, it's unpredictable, and it is completely beyond their control. They preferred the devil they knew, 2 madmen they could keep at a distance, over a divine power that could wipe out their economy with a single word.
And that's really what we're left with. This story isn't just about demons and swine. It's a challenge. It's a mirror to our own values. It asks us to think about what we might be asking to leave our own lives, simply because its presence is too powerful, too costly, or just too disruptive to the comfortable world we've built for ourselves.